Before the measurement of time existed, before the rise of rulers and kingdoms, before the first stroke of history was ever recorded, there was only God. And into that boundless void, he spoke with authority, "Let there be light." In an instant, light burst forth, piercing the suffocating darkness, and from absolute nothingness the universe was born. The oceans were gathered into their boundaries, the land emerged from beneath the waters, and the skies were adorned with radiant lights. Stars, like precious jewels, took their places in the heavens, each one hung by the hand of the Almighty. And at the climax of his grand design, God created humanity, being set apart from every other form of life. Man was placed in perfect fellowship with his Creator, untouched by fear, pain, or death. All was flawless, until a single act of defiance shattered that perfection. A rebellion altered the course of creation itself, and in a single heartbeat, paradise was lost. But before we continue, I will leave below a link to one of our ebooks to improve your relationship with God and help you begin to understand the reason for certain things and trust Him more. From that dreadful moment, humanity bore the weight of sin. Darkness spread like a plague through every generation. Mankind became entangled in his own corruption, and wickedness multiplied until the earth was drenched in violence and despair. God, who is both merciful and just, judged the world with a mighty flood, washing away the ancient, sinful order. Yet even in judgment, His mercy endured. He preserved a remnant, a faithful few through whom His promise would continue. God has always maintained a plan for redemption, calling out to those willing to listen, inviting them to believe. As humanity reached for its own glory, building monuments to pride and chasing after power, God scattered them, humbling the arrogant and frustrating their ambitions. Then, from obscurity, He called a man named Abram, saying, "Leave your homeland and gaze upon the heavens, for your descendants will be as countless as the stars." Genesis 15 verse 5. Through Abram, later known as Abraham, a chosen people would rise. A nation through which redemption would one day come. But their story was not simple. It was a path marked by trials, fierce promises, betrayal, captivity, and deliverance. Yet, through every season of suffering and every moment of exile, God's hand remained upon them. Even in moments of deep betrayal, He was near. Even in anguish, His purpose advanced. Even in their wandering, His covenant endured. This is the origin story of humanity, a tale of divine creation and tragic rebellion, of a fall from innocence and a promise that echoes through generations, from the first breath given to man to the birth of a nation. This is Genesis, a divine narrative that reveals God's unyielding commitment to humanity. In the beginning, before time ticked its first second, God created the heavens and the earth. The world was formless, void, submerged in darkness. But the Spirit of God moved across the surface of the waters, Genesis 1 verse 2. And then, with a word of unstoppable power, God declared, "Let there be light." Light erupted into existence, separating night from day, and God called the light good. But He was not finished. Stretching out the heavens like a canvas, God sculpted mountains and shaped valleys, carved the seas and caused rivers to flow. The earth was teeming with new life. Plants sprouted, trees stretched toward the sky, and creatures of every kind filled land, air, and sea. And it was good. Yet amid all this beauty, something was missing. The final masterpiece. The one who would bear the image of the Creator Himself. God descended, and from the dust of the ground, He formed man with His own hands. The lifeless figure was shaped with care, but it was not yet alive until God bent down and breathed into its nostrils the breath of life. Genesis 2 verse 7. In that sacred moment, man's eyes opened, and Adam drew his first breath. God spoke to him, charging him to multiply, to fill the earth and rule over it. The fish of the sea, the birds of the sky, and every living thing that moved upon the earth. God placed Adam in a paradise, a garden unlike anything the earth has known, where sickness and sorrow were unknown, and death held no claim. But God saw that man was incomplete. While every beast of the field and bird of the air had its partner, Adam walked alone. So God caused a deep sleep to fall upon him, and from his side, He took a rib and fashioned a woman. When Adam awoke and beheld her, something stirred within him, a recognition, a bond that words could barely capture. "This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh," Adam declared with awe and joy, Genesis 2 verse 23. Together they lived, unashamed and unafraid, in perfect harmony with God and creation. But unseen by them, evil lurked in the garden. The enemy watched, waiting for the moment to unravel it all. At the heart of the garden stood two extraordinary trees, the tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. God gave one command, Of every tree you may freely eat, but of the tree of knowledge you shall not eat, for in the day you do, death will surely come. Genesis 2 verses 16 to 17. Yet the deceiver, cunning and ancient, took the form of a serpent and approached the woman. Did God really say you must not eat from any tree? The serpent whispered. Uncertain, Eve replied, we may eat of all, except the one in the middle, for if we touch it or eat it, we will die. But the serpent, master of lies, countered, you will not surely die. God knows that when you eat it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like him, knowing good and evil. Genesis 3 verses 4 to 5. Temptation twisted Eve's thoughts. She saw the fruit, its beauty, its promise of wisdom, and she desired it. She reached, took it, and ate. Then she gave it to Adam, and he also consumed the forbidden fruit. In that instant, their innocence was stripped away. The awareness of their nakedness and shame overwhelmed them, and they fled to hide among the trees. But the voice of the Lord called out in the garden, Adam, where are you? Trembling, Adam answered, I heard you, and I was afraid because I was naked, so I hid. God asked, who told you that you were naked? Have you eaten from the tree I commanded you not to eat from? Adam shifted the blame to the woman, and she in turn pointed to the serpent. Sin had entered the world. The curse was declared, pain, toil, death, and exile. Eden was sealed. But even then a flicker of hope was spoken. God declared that from the woman's seed, one would come to crush the serpent's head. Genesis 3 verse 15. Though death had claimed its place, redemption was set into motion. Life outside Eden was harsh. Adam and Eve bore children, and the promise passed through their lineage. The firstborn, Cain, and his brother Abel each took up their roles. One worked the soil, the other tended flocks. Time came to offer gifts to God. Cain presented the fruits of his labor, while Abel brought the choicest lambs from his flock. The Lord accepted Abel's offering but rejected Cain's, for his heart was not right. Enraged, Cain's face darkened. God spoke to him, why are you angry? If you do what is right, will you not be accepted? But if not, sin crouches at your door. Its desire is to rule over you, but you must overcome it. Genesis 4 verses 6 to 7. This warning marked a turning point, a glimpse into the battle for humanity's soul. The words spoken by God echoed relentlessly within Cain's conscience. You must master it. Yet rather than humbling himself and seeking forgiveness, Cain allowed bitterness to fester in his heart. His perspective shifted completely. Abel was no longer his brother by blood but an obstacle overshadowing his worth. Darkness took root, and jealousy consumed him like a fire impossible to quench. Days passed until one fateful moment, Cain invited Abel to join him in the fields. Smiling outwardly, concealing his rage, Cain led his unsuspecting brother away from prying eyes. In that lonely place, hatred that had been simmering for so long finally erupted. Cain attacked, and for the first time since creation, human blood was spilled upon the earth, forever staining the soil. Have you already clicked on the like button and subscribed to the channel? This helps us understand that you are enjoying our videos and YouTube is sending you more. We count on your help. Let's go back to the video. Then the voice of the Lord called out, where is your brother Abel? And Cain, driven by defiance and guilt, responded, I don't know. Am I my brother's keeper? Genesis 4 verse 9. But heaven had witnessed the crime, and God declared, the voice of your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground. Genesis 4 verse 10. A heavy judgment followed. God pronounced Cain cursed, a wanderer without rest, destined to live far from his presence. Overwhelmed by fear of retribution, Cain pleaded, this punishment is more than I can bear. Whoever finds me will harm me. Yet God, in his mercy, placed a mark upon Cain to protect him from such a fate, though his soul would remain tormented. Cain departed, settling in the distant land of Nod, east of Eden. There, estranged from both God and family, he built a city. His lineage would flourish in number but decay in spirit. Generation after generation, humanity strayed further from its creator. Greed, pride, and violence spread like an incurable disease. Each man sought his own gain, abandoning justice, mercy, and righteousness. The earth became filled with cruelty, and God, sorrowful, spoke these words, my spirit shall not strive with mankind forever, for they are mortal. Their days shall be 120 years. Genesis 6 verse 3. Witnessing the relentless corruption of his creation, God made a grave decision. He would cleanse the earth of its wickedness. Every living being would be swept away, for humanity had become irredeemably corrupted. The Lord saw how great the wickedness of the human race had become on the earth, and that every inclination of the thoughts of the human heart was only evil all the time. Genesis 6 verse 5. It was a world drowning in darkness, where cruelty had replaced kindness and arrogance had replaced humility. But amid this despair, one solitary figure remained faithful. That man was Noah, a descendant of righteousness in a generation of rebellion. While others turned their backs on heaven, Noah walked closely with God. But Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord, Genesis 6 verse 8. In a time when faith was mocked, Noah's obedience shone like a distant star in a blackened sky. God revealed his plan to him, a divine blueprint to preserve life while judgment descended upon the earth. Noah was commanded to construct an ark, vast in size, layered with rooms and sealed with pitch. "Make yourself an ark of gopher wood," God instructed, "and I will bring floodwaters upon the earth to destroy all flesh in which is the breath of life under heaven." Genesis 6 verses 14 and 17. Though rain had never before fallen, Noah believed. For over a century, he labored beneath the scorching sun and endured the scorn of a world that saw no need for repentance. His neighbors sneered, "Why build a vessel for a flood we've never seen? There's no rain, no sea nearby. Your God has abandoned you." But Noah's resolve never faltered. He preached of coming judgment, pleading with men to turn from their wickedness. Still, none heeded his warning. His message was dismissed as madness. Then, when the ark's final beam was set in place, the animals began to arrive in pairs. Mighty beasts, tiny creatures, winged birds and crawling things, each guided by the unseen hand of God. As the last creature entered, God spoke once more, "Go into the ark, you and your entire household, because I have found you righteous in this generation." Genesis 7 verse 1. Noah and his family stepped inside, and God himself closed the massive door, sealing humanity's fate. Dark clouds gathered. Winds rose. Thunder cracked through the heavens. The first drops fell, light at first, then relentless. The sky unleashed its fury, and the earth, long abused by man, answered with rising waters. Rivers overflowed, the oceans surged, and the very mountains disappeared beneath the flood. Desperate cries echoed, fists pounded on the ark's sides. "Open up! Let us in!" But it was too late. Judgment had come. For 40 days and nights, the rain did not cease. The once lush lands were submerged. Cities, forests, and fields vanished. All living things outside the ark perished. Every living thing on the face of the earth was wiped out. Only Noah was left, and those with him in the ark. Genesis 7 verse 23. After 150 days, the waters began to retreat. The ark came to rest upon Mount Ararat, and Noah, waiting patiently, sent out a raven. It did not return. Then a dove, which later brought back an olive leaf, a symbol of rebirth and hope. In time, God commanded Noah, "Come out of the ark, you and your family, and bring out every living thing with you, so they can multiply on the earth." Genesis 8 verses 16 to 17. Noah's first act was to build an altar, offering sacrifices of gratitude. In response, God made a covenant, promising never again to destroy the earth by water. He placed a radiant sign in the sky, the rainbow, a testament to his mercy. "Whenever the rainbow appears in the clouds, I will see it and remember the everlasting covenant." Genesis 9 verse 16. The earth was renewed and humanity began anew. Yet as generations passed, human hearts remained prone to arrogance. People multiplied, and on the plains of Shinar, a bold plan was born. They said, "Come, let us build ourselves a city with a tower that reaches to the heavens, so that we may make a name for ourselves and not be scattered." Genesis 11 verse 4. Stone upon stone, brick upon brick, the tower rose, not as a monument to God but as a symbol of human defiance. But God, observing their pride, intervened. If as one people speaking the same language they have begun to do this, then nothing they plan to do will be impossible for them. "Come, let us go down and confuse their language." Genesis 11 verses 6 to 7. And so, languages were scattered. Men could no longer understand one another. Confusion reigned, the city fell into disorder, and the towering structure was left incomplete. That place was called Babel, for it was there that language was divided, and humanity spread across the earth. Time passed. Nations rose. And from among a people immersed in idolatry, God chose a man of faith. A man not of royalty or fame, but one whose heart would trust the unseen. God said, "Leave your country, your people, and your father's household and go to the land I will show you. I will make you into a great nation." Genesis 12 verses 1 to 2. That man was Abram, later known as Abraham, the father of faith. Abraham had no clear destination in sight, yet his faith was unwavering. He chose to leave behind the world he knew, his land, his family, his comforts. and followed the divine voice that called him into the unknown. What began as a solitary step into uncertainty would unfold into the foundation of a promise that would outlast empires and echo through eternity. God spoke to him with sacred words, "I will make you into a great nation. Your offspring shall be as countless as the dust upon the earth, as numerous as the stars scattered across the heavens, and as plentiful as the grains of sand along the seashore. And through you all the families of the earth shall be blessed." Genesis 12 verses 2-3. Abraham embraced this promise, though years of waiting tested his spirit. Time wore on, and as Sarah remained barren, hope wavered. Yet amid human frailty, divine plans endure, for God was not finished. Sarah, burdened by her barrenness and the relentless passage of years, suggested a solution born of human reasoning. She urged Abraham to take Hagar, her servant, in hopes of securing a child through her. Abraham agreed, and from this union Ishmael was born. Yet, Ishmael was not the fulfillment of God's covenant. The Lord spoke again with certainty, "Sarah your wife shall bear you a son, and you shall name him Isaac. It is with him that I will establish my everlasting covenant." Genesis 17 verse 19. Against all odds, with Abraham 100 years old and Sarah nearing 90, the impossible came to pass. Sarah conceived, and when Isaac was born, laughter filled Abraham's heart. Not mockery but a deep, holy joy, for God's word had proven unshakable. But the greatest test of faith still awaited him. Years later, as Isaac blossomed into the living heir of the promise, God issued a command so staggering it could shatter any father's soul. "Take your son, your only son, whom you love, and go to the region of Moriah. Offer him there as a burnt offering on a mountain I will show you." Genesis 22 verse 2. Abraham's heart must have trembled, yet he rose early, gathered the wood, took the knife, and led Isaac toward Destiny's mountain. Along the way, Isaac sensed something missing, asking, "Father, the fire and wood are here, but where is the lamb for the offering?" Abraham's reply carried unshaken trust. God will provide for himself the lamb. Genesis 22 verse 8. Atop the mountain the altar was built, the wood was placed, and Isaac, obedient, silent, surrendered, lay upon it. Abraham lifted the knife, his heart a storm of sorrow and devotion, believing with every fiber that if God demanded Isaac, he could also restore him to life. In that suspended moment, a voice thundered from the heavens, "Abraham, Abraham, do not lay a hand on the boy. Now I know you fear God because you have not withheld your only son from me." Genesis 22 verses 11-12. A ram appeared, tangled in a thicket. Jehovah Jireh, the Lord who provides, had supplied the sacrifice. The covenant was sealed anew, and God reaffirmed his eternal vow, "I will surely bless you and make your descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky and the sand on the seashore." Genesis 22 verse 17. The legacy of that promise passed from Abraham to Isaac, then to Isaac's sons. Isaac's wife, Rebekah, conceived twins, and even in her womb a struggle raged. Troubled, she sought God, who revealed, "Two nations are in your womb, two peoples within you shall be divided. One shall be stronger than the other, the older shall serve the younger." Genesis 25 verse 23. Esau emerged first, his skin ruddy and covered in hair, but his brother clutched his heel, earning the name Jacob, the supplanter. From their first breaths, their destinies clashed. As years passed, Esau became a skilled hunter, a man of the wild, while Jacob stayed close to the tents, observant and patient. One day, Esau returned from the field exhausted and famished, only to find Jacob preparing a rich, savory stew. Desperation weakened Esau's resolve, and when Jacob proposed an exchange, his birthright for a meal, Esau, blinded by immediate hunger, agreed. The sacred privilege of inheritance, the promise of spiritual authority, was traded for momentary satisfaction. Thus Esau despised his birthright, Genesis 25 verse 34, a decision whose consequences would echo through generations. Decades later, with Isaac old and nearly blind, the moment of blessing arrived. He summoned Esau to hunt and prepare a meal for the ceremonial blessing. But Rebekah, remembering God's prophecy, conspired to secure it for Jacob. She instructed him to disguise himself, covering his arms with goatskins to mimic Esau's hair. Jacob entered his father's presence, claiming to be Esau. Isaac, though wary, was convinced by the touch and scent of his son's garments. The blessing was spoken, "May God give you the dew of heaven, the richness of the earth. Nations shall serve you. Cursed be those who curse you, and blessed be those who bless you." Genesis 27 verses 28-29. No sooner had Jacob departed than Esau arrived. When the truth was revealed, Isaac trembled. Esau's cry was bitter, his heart broken. "He has deceived me twice," Esau lamented. "First he took my birthright and now my blessing." Genesis 27 verse 36. Fueled by fury, Esau vowed vengeance. Rebekah, fearing for Jacob's life, urged him to flee to her brother Laban's home in Haran. Jacob, now a fugitive, carried the blessing but not the peace. As Jacob journeyed into exile, night fell, and with only a stone for a pillow, he lay upon the earth. In his sleep, he dreamed of a stairway stretching from earth to the heavens, angels ascending and descending its steps. Above stood God, who declared, "I am the Lord, the God of Abraham your father and the God of Isaac. The land where you lie I will give to your descendants. Through you, all families of the earth will be blessed." Genesis 28 verses 13 to 14. God promised protection, provision, and a faithful return. Awakening with awe, Jacob declared, "Surely the Lord is in this place and I did not know it." Genesis 28 verse 16. He anointed the stone and named the site Bethel, House of God. There Jacob made a vow, pledging loyalty to the God of his fathers, promising a tenth of all he would receive. The sun rose upon a man forever changed. Though the road ahead would be fraught with trials, Jacob no longer walked alone. The covenant coursed through his veins, and heaven's hand would guide his every step. In the vastness of the ancient desert, Jacob continued his solitary journey, leaving behind the mistakes and shadows of his past, yet unaware of the trials that lay ahead. As the sun scorched the sands and the wind whispered through the valleys, he reached the land of Haran where his uncle Laban lived. Jacob believed he had finally found a refuge, a place where he might build a new chapter far from Esau's fury. But fate had prepared yet another lesson for him. For just as Jacob once deceived his father and brother, now deception would come knocking at his own door. In a field by a well, surrounded by flocks of sheep and shepherds waiting to water their animals, Jacob asked, "Do you know Laban, son of Nahor?" They answered, "Yes, we do. In fact, his daughter Rachel is approaching." And at that very moment, Jacob's eyes met Rachel's, and something inside him shifted forever. She was unlike anyone he had ever seen, her presence radiant, her spirit gentle, her beauty striking. In an instant, the loneliness of Jacob's heart found its cure. He knew without doubt, this was the woman he longed to marry. As the sun dipped behind the hills, Jacob arrived at Laban's home, shared his story and began his stay. A month later Laban spoke. "It's not right that you work for me for nothing, Jacob. Tell me, what shall your wages be?" Without hesitation Jacob answered, "I will work 7 years for your daughter Rachel." Laban agreed, and thus began the long years of labor. Day after day, Jacob toiled under the relentless sun and chilling nights, tending livestock, mending fences, and awaiting the moment Rachel would be his. But the years felt brief because of the love that filled his heart, a love that made every sacrifice a mere shadow compared to the promise of their union. Have you already clicked on the like button and subscribed to the channel? This helps us understand that you are enjoying our videos and YouTube is sending you more. We count on your help. Let's go back to the video. When the long-awaited day arrived, the air was thick with music and celebration. The lamps were lit, the feast prepared, and the house of Laban echoed with joy. But in the cover of darkness, deceit moved silently. That night, when Jacob thought he took Rachel as his bride, it was Leah, the elder sister, who was brought to him. And in the light of morning, Jacob's heart was pierced with horror. Betrayed, he confronted Laban. "Why have you done this to me? I served you for Rachel. Why deceive me?" And with cold calculation Laban replied, "It is not our custom to marry the younger before the elder. Fulfill the week with Leah and I will also give you Rachel, for another 7 years of service." Jacob had no choice. His love for Rachel compelled him, and thus began another 7 years of labor, of struggle, of waiting. 14 years stolen by deception. Yet in all this, God remained at work, shaping a destiny greater than any man could see. As seasons passed, Jacob prospered. His flocks multiplied, his wealth increased, and though tension with Laban's sons grew like a storm on the horizon, Jacob held to the promise of God. One night, as envy thickened the air, the Lord spoke, "Return to the land of your fathers. I will be with you." But returning meant facing Esau, the brother he had wronged, the man who had vowed to take his life. Fear gripped Jacob's heart, but greater still was the battle that awaited him, not with Esau, but with God himself. Crossing the river Jabbok under the cloak of night, Jacob sent his family and possessions ahead and remained alone. Then in the silence, a mysterious figure appeared. Without a word, the man leapt upon Jacob and a fierce, relentless struggle began. The two wrestled through the night, neither yielding. Every breath was a cry, every moment a test of will. As dawn approached, the stranger touched Jacob's hip, dislocating it instantly. Pain surged through Jacob's body, but he refused to let go. He clung to the figure, now realizing this was no mortal man. It was the Lord himself. "Let me go, for the dawn is breaking," the stranger demanded. But Jacob, with tears and sweat staining his face, cried, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." Then came the question, "What is your name?" "Jacob," he answered. And the Lord declared, "You shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel, for you have struggled with God and with men and have prevailed." As the sun rose, Jacob released his grip, broken yet blessed, wounded yet transformed. He was no longer the deceiver. Now he was Israel, the Prince of God. The next morning, Jacob lifted his eyes and saw Esau approaching with 400 men. Trembling, he bowed 7 times before his brother, prepared for wrath. But Esau, to Jacob's shock, ran to him and embraced him. "My brother," Esau said, his voice thick with emotion. And together they wept. The past was mended, hearts reconciled. What had seemed impossible was made real by the hand of God. And so began the story of Israel, a nation born not from strength alone, but from brokenness healed by grace. Jacob's 12 sons would become the tribes of Israel, each carrying the legacy of struggle and blessing. Among them was one whose story would shake the foundations of history: Joseph, a young man of dreams and destiny. From his youth, Joseph was set apart. Jacob loved him more than the others, and to show it, gifted him a coat of many colors, a symbol of favor and division. His brothers' hearts burned with jealousy, and when Joseph began sharing prophetic dreams, their bitterness deepened. "We were binding sheaves," Joseph once said, "and my sheaf rose and stood, while yours gathered around and bowed to mine." Another time, "I saw the sun, the moon, and 11 stars bowing to me." His father rebuked him, and his brothers' hatred festered. One fateful day, Jacob sent Joseph to check on his brothers in the fields. As Joseph approached, they conspired. "Here comes the dreamer. Let's kill him and claim a beast devoured him." But Reuben intervened, "Shed no blood. Cast him into this pit." Stripped of his coat, Joseph was thrown into a dry well, alone and terrified. But his torment was not over. A caravan bound for Egypt appeared, and Judah, greedy and cunning, proposed, "What gain is there in murder? Let's sell him." For 20 pieces of silver, Joseph was sold, a slave bound for a foreign land, his future uncertain but his destiny intact. In Egypt, Joseph was purchased by Potiphar, captain of Pharaoh's guard. The Lord's favor rested upon him, and soon Joseph rose to oversee Potiphar's entire estate. Everything he touched prospered. Yet temptation lurked. Potiphar's wife, filled with desire, sought to seduce him. Day after day she whispered, "Lie with me." But Joseph, loyal and upright, refused. "My master trusts me. How could I do this wicked thing and sin against God?" One day, as no one else was in the house, she seized him. Joseph fled, leaving his garment behind, choosing integrity over safety. Enraged by rejection, she accused him falsely, and Potiphar, though conflicted, cast Joseph into prison. Once again, Joseph found himself betrayed, stripped of position, and trapped in darkness. But even in prison, the Lord's presence did not abandon him. The story of Joseph, the dreamer, the betrayed, the survivor, was only beginning. In the heart of Egypt's darkest prison, a man named Joseph stood under the gaze of both God and the prison warden. Though bound in chains, his spirit remained unbroken and his faith unwavering. The scriptures tell us that the Lord was with Joseph, causing everything he touched to prosper. From that day forward, Joseph was placed in charge of the other prisoners. Even in captivity, the hand of God elevated him. And it was within those shadowed walls that a new divine gift would emerge: the ability to interpret dreams. A gift not born from books or worldly wisdom, but directly imparted by heaven. One fateful night, 2 of Pharaoh's highest officials were cast into the prison, the royal cupbearer and the baker, each troubled by a mysterious dream they could not comprehend. Desperation clung to them like a cloak, until Joseph, filled with the Spirit of God, listened carefully to their visions. The cupbearer spoke first, his voice heavy with concern. "In my dream," he began, "I saw a vine with 3 branches. Buds appeared, then blossomed and ripened into grapes. I squeezed the grapes into Pharaoh's cup and placed it in his hand." Without hesitation, Joseph declared, "The 3 branches are 3 days. In 3 days, Pharaoh will lift you up and restore you to your position. And when this happens, remember me." Hope ignited in the cupbearer's heart. Then came the baker, eager for a favorable interpretation. In my dream, he said, I carried 3 baskets on my head. In the top basket were baked goods for Pharaoh, but birds came and devoured them. Joseph's countenance turned somber. The 3 baskets are 3 days. In 3 days, Pharaoh will lift off your head and impale your body on a pole, and the birds will feast upon your flesh. And so it came to pass. The cupbearer was restored, the baker was executed, and Joseph, forgotten once more, left waiting in prison for 2 more years. But destiny never forgets those marked by heaven. One restless night, Pharaoh himself was tormented by a pair of dreams no sage or sorcerer could decipher. 7 fat cows grazed by the Nile, then 7 scrawny, sickly cows devoured them. Then 7 plump heads of grain were consumed by 7 withered ones. No man in Egypt could explain it. And at last the cupbearer remembered Joseph. My lord, he said urgently, there is a man in prison who interprets dreams with divine accuracy. Joseph was summoned, quickly shaved and dressed in fine clothes, and brought before the throne. Pharaoh recounted his visions, his face pale with unease. Joseph, bold yet humble, replied, I cannot interpret it, but God will give Pharaoh the answer. He revealed the meaning. 7 years of great abundance would be followed by 7 years of severe famine. Joseph, with wisdom from heaven, advised Pharaoh to appoint a discerning man to store provisions during the years of plenty, to prepare for the years of scarcity. Pharaoh, stunned by the clarity of Joseph's words, declared to his court, Can we find anyone like this man in whom is the Spirit of God? And in an instant, Joseph's chains were traded for a signet ring. You shall be in charge of my palace, and all my people shall submit to your orders. Only with respect to the throne will I be greater than you. From prisoner to governor, Joseph rode through Egypt in Pharaoh's chariot, and all bowed before him. Egypt flourished under his leadership, as he built storehouses and gathered grain as the sand of the sea. And when the years of famine struck, Egypt alone had bread, and the world came seeking relief. Far away in Canaan, famine gnawed at the land. Joseph's brothers, driven by hunger, journeyed to Egypt to buy grain. They bowed low before the governor, never suspecting it was the brother they had betrayed. Joseph recognized them instantly. The old wounds of betrayal stirred within him, yet so did his dreams of long ago. He tested their hearts, accusing them of espionage, demanding they bring their youngest brother, Benjamin. Jacob, reluctant to risk his remaining son, finally consented as the famine worsened. And when Joseph saw Benjamin, his heart ached, for here was the one brother who had not abandoned him. Still, one final test remained. Joseph invited them to a banquet, treating them with honor. But secretly he commanded his silver cup be placed in Benjamin's sack. As they departed, the guards overtook them, and when the cup was found, despair broke the brothers' hearts. Judah, once callous, now pleaded for Benjamin's life. Take me instead, he begged, for if the boy does not return, our father will die of grief. In that moment, Joseph's walls of restraint crumbled. He wept openly, revealing his identity. I am Joseph, your brother, the one you sold into slavery. Terror gripped them, expecting wrath, but Joseph spoke only of God's providence. Do not be afraid. It was not you who sent me here, but God. He sent me ahead to preserve your lives. The family was reconciled. Joseph sent for his father Jacob, who upon hearing the news, could scarcely believe it. Joseph is alive, he cried. I will go to him before I die. And so Jacob and his household made their way to Egypt. When father and son finally met, years of sorrow melted away in a single embrace. Now I can die in peace, for I have seen your face and know you are alive. The people of Israel settled in Egypt, and there they multiplied. Joseph lived to see generations born. On his deathbed he spoke of the promise. God will surely come to your aid and take you to the land he swore to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And when he does, carry my bones with you. Joseph died in Egypt, but his story was not over. 4 centuries later, when Israel was shackled by Pharaoh's tyranny, another child would be rescued from the waters, a child named Moses. And through him, God would deliver his people. The Exodus would begin. This is not just ancient history. It is the story of a promise that has never faded, a promise alive today. If this story stirred your heart, join us for what comes next. The Exodus awaits. God bless you, and until next time, stay with us on this incredible journey through the Word of God.